with 5 News at 5.
On 5 News, huge falls in global stock markets sparking new fears on the economy here. £60 billion wiped off Britain's biggest companies, slashing the value of millions of pension funds. The numbers are big and it's a complicated picture. We'll tell you what it means for you also tonight. Some good news as Eon cuts gas prices, but critics say they don't go nearly far enough.
I cannot understand why we're not getting a reduction in electricity costs, because electricity prices have fallen by more than 20%.
The red front doors making asylum seekers a target. They say it marks them out for racist attacks.
You telling everyone I'm asylum seeker, I'm less person than anybody.
How much exercise should a preschool child get? The answer might surprise you. And why taking your dog to the local park could put its life in danger. Hello and welcome to 5 News. I'm Sian Williams. If you have a pension, then there's some bad news tonight because its value is being slashed as global stock markets tumble. The UK's top 100 companies in which a large amount of our pensions are invested lost about £60 billion today. Let's get the very latest now from Julian Drucker from the City. Julian, what's been happening today and how does it affect us?
Sian, it's already been the worst start to the year for the stock market since the 1920s. Today, things got even worse. The FTSE 100 lost more than 3% today. That equates to around £48 billion. It means it actually entered bear market territory. That is when the index loses 20% from its last peak. That hasn't happened since 2009. Of course, that was in the midst of the financial crisis. This independent analyst we just spoke to has given us his reaction to what's happened to today.
That there is almost this fear factor around the market that with the oil price being low affecting China and the knock-on effect from what's happening in China then affecting the rest of the markets, it means currently there's no respite from any of these downside.
The world's energy watchdog has already said this week that the market is in danger of drowning in oversupply. It means oil is currently being traded at prices not seen since the turn of the century. Oil plus the ongoing economic problems in China are causing jitters for the markets here. So it's bad news if you've got a pension, bad news if you own a stock and shares ISA, and bad news if your pension is linked to the FTSE as well. It's meant a very torrid day here with more torrid days to come.
Julian, thank you. Well, as Julian was saying, the slide in oil prices is continuing, and that's because there's a glut of it on the market. Now, you'd think your energy bills would be tumbling too, but last week we told you how companies aren't passing on those savings to customers. Here's a reminder of those numbers. Compared with 2 years ago, firms are paying 50% less for their wholesale energy. At the same time, though, the average household bill has only dropped by 14%. Well, today, one company is cutting bills. Catherine Jones is with me. Catherine, who is it and by how much?
It's Eon, and they're cutting their gas prices by 5.1%. Now, the average household now pays about £1,100 for their energy, and so this would represent about a £32 cut on an annual bill. Eon says the unpredictability of the global markets, as we've just been hearing about, means that's the biggest cut that they can't risk. But the consumer groups are pretty underwhelmed, particularly by the fact that they haven't cut the electricity prices, only the gas ones.
I cannot understand why we're not getting a reduction in electricity costs, because electricity prices have fallen by more than 20%. We know wholesale prices make up half our bill, so why aren't we seeing a reduction in those too?
So, Catherine, what should customers do now? Is it time to switch?
Not yet, no. I've been ringing around for advice, and here are the top tips, as it were. The first of all is actually to wait for all the cuts to feed through the system. That'll probably happen over the next fortnight or so. Secondly, do consider a fixed tariff, because although only 30% of us pick that kind of tariff where you don't have to worry about prices rising, they are potentially £300 cheaper at the moment for the average household. It's amazing. The last thing, I had a look at all the figures, and the small independent suppliers are currently providing 9 out of 10 of the cheapest deals. Obviously, that might change over the next fortnight or so, so I've put some more detailed advice on the Facebook page to help.
Thanks very much, Catherine. Here, the number of people out of work has fallen to its lowest level for nearly 8 years. In the most recent figures, UK unemployment stood at 1.6 million. Armed militants have attacked a university in Pakistan, leaving at least 19 people dead. Gunmen stormed the campus in the northwest of the country before being killed by army commandos. One Taliban commander claimed it was responsible, but later denied this. Asylum seekers have told 5 News how they've been subjected to abuse after being put up in homes with distinctive red doors. The government has now ordered an urgent review into their housing after a company in Middlesbrough was accused of leaving families at risk. From there, Catherine Jacob reports.
A front door painted a seemingly innocuous shade of red, just like many others in this area of Middlesbrough. These red doors, though, are now being repainted after asylum seekers who live behind some of them claimed the easily identifiable door colour has made them targets for abuse. This man who wants to remain anonymous told me he wasn't here long before the problems began.
And after the few days I found people kicking the door, banging the door, throw the eggs on the door,
Throwing eggs?
Yeah, throwing eggs and everything. People look at us different way.
Painting the door red, you telling everyone I'm asylum seeker, I'm less person than anybody, and that I should be targeted. And that's what's happening.
All the red front doors we knocked on housed asylum seekers, though many told us they hadn't experienced problems. Their landlord is Joe Mast Developments, a subcontractor of G4S, which holds the asylum contract for the North East.
A lot of the properties that we have in Middlesbrough have red doors, being painted red doors, and whether they're used by asylum seekers or whether they're used to house private tenants, it doesn't really make any difference, but the front doors are painted a variety of colours. It's true that there is a lot of red doors, but it's not a particular issue, I don't think.
Joe Mast says it has received no complaints from residents. In Parliament today, though, the Minister for Immigration said he's deeply concerned and has launched an audit of asylum seeker accommodation in the North East.
We will look at this carefully, rigorously, and so it is not simply a question of looking at the contract. If there are issues that need to be brought to the attention of the police and criminal action taken thereafter, that will be a matter for the police. But again, I will urge those with any evidence to come forward and ensure that that is reported appropriately.
One former local MP says he highlighted the red door issue 2 years ago and is saddened nothing has been done until now.
I don't believe for a moment that this company has set out to deliberately paint these doors in a particular way because they house asylum seekers. I think it's the other way round. I think that's happened because because that's how they paint their doors. But when this issue was brought before them, I would have expected them to have some sensitivity about dealing with it.
The Home Office says staff have been sent to Middlesbrough to ensure the red doors are repainted and that government-imposed standards are being upheld. Catherine Jacob, 5 News, Middlesbrough.
The vast majority of children in the UK aren't getting enough exercise. That's the warning from the British Heart Foundation, who say parents aren't aware that under 5s need at least 3 hours of physical activity a day. If that sounds a lot, well, the charity says there are simple ways to ensure that they meet that amount, as Layla Hayes reports.
These children enjoy being active, and getting exercise will also improve their health. But unlike the children here, most under 5s simply aren't active enough. The government says children under 5 should be physically active for at least 3 hours every day. That includes things like running, walking and skipping. But less than 10% of 2 to 4-year-olds are currently meeting those guidelines.
Research shows active children are more likely to become active adults. If they start young, they lead healthier lives.
Climbing counts as physically active, but sadly doing a puzzle does not. And TV and iPads are also a big no-no. But what do parents think about achieving 3 hours of physical activity every day?
Depends on the weather. Depends on the season. It's winter now, so it's very difficult to do that. In the summer, of course you can.
It's a money thing as well, because you have to pay to come to somewhere like this, and whilst the park is free, you have to pay for swimming lessons, pay for football lessons. So it's another reason why it's easier said than done to do 3 hours a day.
When you look at children today, do you think they're less active than they were years ago?
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm not sure kids actually do as much sports at school anymore.
Experts say the government needs to do more to make it easier for preschool children to exercise.
We're standing in the street at the moment. We see there's a lot of cars around here. We want more traffic-free zones so that children can get out and play, access to green space and some of the wonderful parks that are out there as well. So we want to see those being protected.
It takes time and it sometimes costs money, but experts say keeping kids active should turn them into healthy adults. Layla Hayes, 5 News.
And still to come on the programme, the surprising danger to dogs, why vets are warning against a favourite pastime, and...
Are you ready to stump for Trump? I'm here to support the next president of the United States, Donald Trump.
America's new political power couple, but will Sarah Palin's backing boost or bust Donald Trump's chances? All that and more after the break. Welcome back. You're watching 5 News. Police in England and Wales are getting a new weapon in the fight against crime. Accountants and IT experts. Forces will be allowed to draft in volunteer specialists to help them solve cyber crimes and frauds. Police representatives say giving civilians more powers could cause problems. The Home Secretary says it'll ease the burden on officers. Our political editor Andy Bell reports now on the changing face of our police.
The police have always evolved, not just in uniform and equipment, but in the jobs they're expected to do. And now there are also special constables, support officers, and the plan is to have more civilian volunteers to help out too. This pilot scheme with Hampshire Police has volunteers who are IT experts helping the police investigate cybercrime. The Home Secretary welcomes it.
The world is changing very quickly in terms of technology and cyber matters, and it's important to keep up to date with those changes. And that's why bringing people in with specialist skills as volunteers or as special constables is so important. It enhances the ability of the police to be able to deal with these sorts of crimes and to be able to protect the public.
Theresa May quotes the founder of the Metropolitan Police, Sir Robert Peel, saying the police are the public are the police. Her take on that seems to be as police numbers go down, then the public in various ways can fill the gap. So what powers does everyone have? Well, police officers have the power to arrest. Special constables, who are trained but only have to be on duty 16 hours a month, have the same powers. Support officers, or PCSOs, can detain people for 30 minutes but need an officer actually to make an arrest. And the new police volunteer support officers would have the same powers if chief constables grant them. But they're more for non-frontline duties, like taking witness statements. The body representing officers is alarmed.
The public rightly deserve and expect a professional, trained, resourced and accountable police service. I'm not quite sure how you ensure that that is going to happen in relation to volunteers. I think it's going to be quite problematic and it needs to be looked at very carefully.
But despite those objections, the plan is for the thin blue line to be reinforced by thousands of volunteers. Andy Bell, 5 News.
Now, he looks happy enough, doesn't he? But it turns out getting your dog to fetch a stick may not be as harmless as you might think. Leading vets are warning that the everyday pastime is causing some animals painful injuries. Not surprisingly, it's got owners wondering why there's a fuss all of a sudden. So we sent Minnie Stevenson to find out.
The age-old game of fetch with your dog, one of life's simple pleasures. But the UK's leading vets are warning dog owners not to throw wooden sticks. It's after a rise in what they've called life-threatening injuries, and this is how serious it can get. Take Maya, who luckily survived after a 10-centimetre stick became wedged in her throat. Today, the British Veterinary Association told 5 News, instead, plastic sticks, balls and frisbees are the answer.
There is a strong association between dog ownership and throwing sticks for them. We're at pains as the British Veterinary Association to reflect what our members, our veterinary surgeon members and our veterinary nurse colleagues are seeing in veterinary practice, which are some of the really serious injuries that can be caused by sticks.
Although that advice has left vets in the doghouse with some owners. Are you shocked to learn that you're not supposed to be throwing sticks for your dogs? Does that seem...
It's very strange advice.
Really?
Yeah.
You won't be following it?
I certainly won't, no.
It seems a bit absurd. And a bit of a kind of people worrying about a bit too much of nothing. I've kind of grown up with dogs my whole life and I've got my own dog now, and we've never had an issue with it having sticks thrown for it forever.
So does it worry you then, this advice?
It does, but I mean, I am probably an over-anxious. This is my first puppy, so, you know, I want to do everything I can to make sure she's okay.
But there are, of course, safer plastic alternatives. So now we know that sticks are out. We've got Holly here. I'm going to give this a whirl. This is the official advice that you should be using things like this. Oh, look, she's eager, she's keen. Are you ready? Holly, look. Oh. Go. No? OK, so not quite as appetising as a stick, it turns out, but there you go. The official advice, though, is to ditch those wooden sticks. Minnie Stevenson, 5 News.
Now, he is arguably America's most divisive man. She, perhaps, his most divisive woman. Last night, Donald Trump received Sarah Palin's official backing to become the next US president. It's 8 years since she shot to prominence as an outspoken vice presidential candidate. And as Dominic Reynolds reports, last night's announcement wasn't short on fighting talk from either of them.
Walking out to music from the movies, Donald Trump is one of only a few people in politics who are genuine celebrities too. Last night, he was endorsed by another.
Governor Sarah Palin. Special person. Thank you.
She never made it to the White House, but Sarah Palin is special because she communicates like this.
You ready for a commander-in-chief who will let our warriors do their job and go kick ISIS ass? Right-wing and bitter clinging proud clingers of our guns, our God, and our religions and our Constitution tell us that we're not red enough. And are you ready to stump for Trump? I'm here to support the next president of the United States, Donald Trump.
Donald Trump was once a political joke. America's starting to take his popularity seriously, but he's never been tested at the polls. He will be in a fortnight.
Thank you very much.
This man, Ted Cruz, is hoping to stand in his way when Iowa's Republicans vote for their candidate.
Donald J. Trump.
So it's no accident Sarah Palin was unveiled in Iowa, but she's been a secret weapon before. John McCain made her his would-be vice president 8 years ago. She wasn't always the most effective weapon, though, mocked for saying Alaska's location meant she had foreign policy experience.
You can actually see Russia from land here in Alaska.
And more recently for appearing to forget the official language of the United States.
When you're here, let's speak American. I mean, let's speak English, and that's...
But this veteran watcher of US politics says Palin gives Trump access to a whole new group of voters.
This crowd that's sick of Obama's leading from behind, the professor who's sitting there lecturing, they want a man of action. And Palin is saying that's what this guy is.
Thank you.
We'll find out on February the 1st if Palin's endorsement does make the difference in Iowa. If it does, and Trump makes it all the way to Washington, don't count out Vice President Palin going with him. Dominic Reynolds, 5 News.
They say life imitates art. Well, for one Hollywood actor, that has come spectacularly true. Jamie Foxx, star of action films like Miami Vice, has been telling of the moment that he rescued a motorist from a burning vehicle in California. As Danny Sinha reports.
Jamie Foxx has played plenty of heroes on the big screen, and this week he played one in real life. The Oscar-winning actor heard a crash outside his house and sprung into action, pulling a man out of his burning truck.
As the flames do come into the cabin, I leaned back, but I think what it did, it hit his legs. And as we pull him out, within 5 seconds later, the truck goes up.
The driver's father met Fox to thank him for his actions, all too aware his son nearly died.
It's just so we all, I think, want to be able to, be willing to jump in when it needs to be done. But how many of us really would? And, whether this person's famous or not, I'm so glad, so happy.
The Hollywood star posted a picture of that emotional meeting on Instagram, saying this is all that matters, that a man, a son, a brother's life was spared last night. God had his arms wrapped around all of us. No heroes, just happy fathers.
I don't look at it as heroic. I just look at it like, you just had to do something, and it all just worked out.
They say count your lucky stars, and in this case the help of one star played a huge part in what could have been a huge tragedy. The driver suffered broken bones, burn injuries and a punctured lung. He's expected though to make a full recovery. Danny Sinha, 5 News.
Before we go, Matt is here to tell us what's coming up on 5 News tonight. Hello, Matt.
Hi, Sian. Good to see you. We'll have more on that worrying news about the financial markets and what effect it could have on, well, all of us. City expert Louise Cooper will be joining me for that. Plus, I'll be chatting to the heterosexual couple who are taking legal action to win the right to have a civil partnership. Charles Keedon and Rebecca Steinfeld don't want to get married, but they say they are being discriminated against because only same-sex couples are allowed to have a civil partnership.
Interesting. Thank you. See you a little bit later. That's it for now, though. Sean Welby has the weather next. I'll see you again tomorrow at 5, not from this studio, though. Find out where then. Matt's back in an hour. Thanks very much for watching. Bye-bye for now.